order a meeting of the Marina Tree Committee. Nick, would you like to do the staff of the roll call?
Sure. Chair Simmons,
Here.
Vice Chair Gardner, Committee Member Markham, Committee Member Elvira,
Here.
Committee Member St. John.
Here.
We have quorum.
Great, thank you. Let's have a moment of silence for all the things we need to be quiet about and think about and going on in the world. Oh, we're supposed to stand. Please stand. Okay, if we stay quiet too long, we may never want to speak again. Will someone like to do the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, with liberty and justice. Thank you, Richard. Does anybody among the this is not this is the period where we have an announcement of any special events or meetings of interest. Anybody on the committee have any special interest information? I will just report that we've made some progress on the tree list. I think we'll be bringing that before the committee in a future meeting. There's still some more work to do. And Jeff and I have been talking about, committee member Jeff Markham and I have been working on the work plan for what we're going to do for the next year. I think that's how we're going. Does anybody from the public have any informational or special announcements that they would like to make? Hearing none. At this time, we are open for communications from the audience about any items that is not on the agenda for discussion about matters that have to do with the tree committee. I think this is what we should be talking about now. Any matters that are not on the agenda? Anybody in the public wish to make a comment? Hearing none, we'll move on. For the committee members, does anybody have any ex parte communications for quasi judicial matters that may become before this committee? I have one. I did go to the for agenda item B tonight from MST. They had a public information meeting at the library in middle of December. I went to that wanting to learn more about the project. I did not speak to anybody about any issues specifically that become before the tree committee, but I was actually introduced to the MST representative, Ms. Reinhammer, as on the tree committee. And we talked generally about what's going on in Marina, and I asked questions about the project in a general sense of all the staff members from the surf project. I also actually did meet Ms. Reinhammer when we were down at the market. Myself and some neighbors were talking about the surf line project, and she overheard us. And it was kind of fun because they had a lot of questions about the project. So she came over and kind of coached us about what's happening with the project and what's it all about. And none of my neighbors had gone to the meeting, so it was a good opportunity. We again did not speak about any matters about any of the tree removal issues or any of those sorts of matters. I think that's all I have to disclose.
I have some ex parte communication. I was unable to attend the December 12th public forum on the agenda item B, but I was in communication with some community members namely Mia Wen, Grace Silva Santella, and Mike Moeller, who attended, and they sent me some of the materials that were presented at the meeting. I also got a copy of the attachment one from Ms. Reinheimer as well on the, I guess it's attachment on line 20 ridership BMT GNT reduction information that was presented at that meeting as well. I got a copy of that from Mayor Delgado. So that was the extent of my communication ex parte.
Thank
Chair Simmons, I also attended the SURF meeting in December and talked with several of the representatives. There were several tables and kind of made my rounds and was introduced as a member of the planning commission. But I didn't have any type of ex parte communications that were specific to the tree committee and the tree removal. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move on. We're on item 7 on the consent agenda. Our main matter to do is to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes? Or would we like to discuss the minutes for further discussion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
Okay, I'll second the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion's passed. We've approved the minutes. Okay, so we're moving on to item number 8 on the agenda, public hearing. The first matter will be a Hilltop Park in the Dunes tree removal permit. And we'll start by asking the staff, do we have a brief report to hear about the tree removal permit for the Hilltop project?
We do. We have Steve Flint with RGS and Brad Evanson from RGS. And then we have the applicant as well, in case you have any questions for them. But I'm going to turn it over to Steve Flint, and I'm going to share an image or the map from the memo for the tree committee while he speaks.
Good evening, committee members. I am Steve Flint with RGS, and I am here to make this brief presentation. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this map, but the city has gone through several rounds of inventories of trees on this particular site. The first one was in 2019. That was the initial study. A supplemental study was done in December of 2020. That had to do with the fact that there were some adjustments to the boundary areas, and some of the trees that had fallen outside the original boundaries had not been included. So that supplemental report addressed that issue. And this most recent arborist report has to do with the 5 trees that are shown in the lower half of the site area. And basically, these trees are considered invasive non-natives, and originally were part of a plan to retain the trees. But because of their status as invasive trees, the city has requested they remove them. So that's what this request is for, is the removal of these trees. Our recommendation is that they go ahead and remove those trees. There are conditions that were recommended on the initial arborist report that had to do with bat surveys and also any raptor nestings to be observed. But both of those conditions were outside of the nesting times, and for roosting bats were outside of that window as well. So that really shouldn't apply. Like I said, a number of trees have already been removed from the site, and the impacts have pretty much been done already. So again, staff is recommending that these trees be approved. Actually, administrative approval would be sufficient based on what's in the staff report and in the zoning code and general plan. Another thing, the general plan does recommend that any healthy tree that's being removed should be replaced. However, it does not apply to the invasive eucalyptus and the Australian tea trees that we're talking about here. So essentially, it's just an approval for the removal of the trees. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Does anybody on the committee have any questions for staff about this matter? Okay, you do?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not having discussion now. This is just questions. So I'm just,
Me, the question?
no, if you have a question about what we just heard for staff, and we still have time for discussion. We still have to hear from the public. So it's just a question. If you have a clarifying question.
The removal of 1426, my concern is the two trees that are right next to it. Is that? Question.
The question is, what's going to happen to the two trees on the side of, what was the tree number?
1426.
1426.
Yeah,
I have not been on site recently, so I'm not sure if those trees are still in place. I would check to Jack Gow, who's the project manager for the developer on that. I was under the impression that those had been removed already, but
those
I
are
might
two
be mistaken on
cypress,
that.
excuse me, they're two Monterey cypress trees. So maybe this is a matter we should consider more deeply in discussion.
Through the chair,
Yeah.
we do have the arborist in the audience
Oh,
who
okay.
did the arborist report.
Yeah, let's
He can
hear.
s- He can speak to it.
Mr. Duffy?
Yeah, I'm actually here representing a separate project, but those two Monterey cypress are to be preserved that are adjacent to it. And the removal of it wouldn't affect those trees. Yeah, yeah. There would be protection measures implemented throughout the removal. Yeah.
Patrick, not Duffy. Yeah, well, you just got promoted. That's fine. What? Okay, are there any members in the public who would like to comment on this agenda item about the proposed tree removals on Hilltop Park? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing for this matter. Now we should discuss amongst ourselves, what do we think about this permit removal? Anybody opposed or have any more questions
I'm
about
not opposed to
how
it.
it's gonna-
Invasive.
I'm not opposed to it. I went down and looked at them and they're invasive. They're fairly separate and away from other vegetation. I don't see any problem with habitat. I think it's okay.
I just have one small question. The statement that the city recently requested the removal of these trees be part of the Phase 2 East from the Dunes project. In what capacity did the city make this request? Was it from the mayor's office or from Parks and Recreation, et cetera? There's no, only the statement that the city made the request.
I don't
To
know
the
the
chair, I
answer to
believe
that.
that request had come through the city manager's office.
Okay. And was it a written request or by telephone or email?
Yeah, I haven't seen any written correspondence on that.
Staff, do we have any background on the,
Yeah, the Phase 2 East tree permit was actually approved before the tree committee got reconstituted. And that got approved probably about a year ago at this point, so before the committee got reformed.
Yeah, I think that's how I understood the matter.
Jack, if you want to speak to this item, you can also chime in if you want to say something.
Oh yeah, I was waiting for my cue. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Dear committee members, thank you for having me speak. My name is Jack Gao from MCP Shane Homes. I just wanted to thank Steve again and staff giving that really detailed information to the committee. And for these 5 trees we propose to be removed, it has been discussed throughout the years. Our team has done a very detailed report from a licensed arborist, list out these 5 were invasive, and it is on our Hilltop Park that is currently under construction and to be open to the public soon in the next couple months. So we're hoping the committee could grant us this approval removing these trees so we could move forward with the Hilltop Park project and get everything constructed, tidied up, and be ready, open to the public. But if you have any additional questions, please let me know.
Thank you. Richard, does that answer your questions?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you.
Any other comments from anybody? Okay, so I'll make a motion that we accept the resolution to remove the 5 requested trees on the Hilltop Park permit application for removal. Anybody second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. Okay. We are now going to discuss item B on the agenda. There's a permit application from MST Surfline Project to remove trees. And we're going to hear a report about that. Before we get started though, given the high level of community interest in this project, some of us may have conflicts of interest or known opinions about this matter. And so I'm going to ask committee members if anybody has any conflict of interest in this matter.
I do. I wrote a letter to the editor of the Monterey County Weekly responding to an article that David Schmalz wrote on the Surfline project, expressing my opinion on it. And as a result of that, I believe I have to recuse myself on this particular topic.
Okay, so you're going to recuse. All right.
Yeah, the staff and city attorney also agreed that I should do so.
Okay. We'll see you in a little while. You're going to go sit down. Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. Does any other members of the committee have any conflict of interest in this matter? Okay, hearing none, none others, we'll move on. So can we ask the staff for a report?
Yes, thank you, Chair and members of the committee and members of the public. I'm Allison Hunter. I'm the planning manager and the project manager for this project. I have a brief presentation that's really just going to provide some highlights and then a couple of new tidbits of information and a reiteration of what the tree committee's role is for this review. And then Lisa Reinheimer from MST will also have a presentation. They might at this point be a little bit repetitive now, but she'll be up next when I'm done, if that's the preference of the committee. So just some highlights. The project consists of the removal of 92 trees associated with the development of a bus rapid transit line, or BRT, and it's known as the SURF project. A portion of the project is in the coastal zone. MST, Monterey Salinas Transit, has submitted an application to the city for both the tree removal and a coastal development permit, and they're being processed at the same time together. The Planning Commission is the review authority for the CDP and the tree permit. So per the municipal code, section 1762060, the tree committee can make a recommendation on the tree permit to either the community development director or the planning commission. And in this case, since the planning commission is already the review authority for another associated permit, your recommendation will just go directly to the planning commission. Just a couple of notes about the California Environmental Quality Act. So MST is lead agency under CEQA, so they are responsible for adopting their own CEQA documents, and they did already adopt a mitigated negative declaration and 2 exemptions. We, the city of Marina, are a responsible agency under CEQA because we have permit issuance authority. So we are required to make our own CEQA determination. Section 15096 of the CEQA guidelines allows a responsible agency like the city of Marina in this case to adopt the lead agency's CEQA documents, and that's what we're recommending be done at this point. So just to note that the document, the mitigated neg deck, does include biological mitigation measures that are included as conditions of approval in this tree permit those are pertaining directly to the tree removal. Here is a map that was in the arborist report that you've all seen, showing the tree removal in the Transportation Agency of Monterey County, or TAMC, right-of-way along Del Monte Boulevard, just on the west side of Del Monte Boulevard. Showing the red dots are the trees to be removed, and there are blue dots for trees that are going to be retained. And at the kind of lower left-hand corner of this map, you can see in orange hatching denotes the coastal zone, and there are 2 trees to be removed there. And then just kind of staying right now up in the north end of the corridor, this is MST's rendering of what the new transit stop would look like at Palm Avenue. So basically very close to where we are right now, just on the other side of Del Monte and down a little bit. Here is a linear map. This is hard to read and not super clear, but we can go into a little bit of detail later. But this shows the linear TAMC right-of-way and the outline of the improvement starting here on the right side at Palm Avenue and progressing south to the highway overpass at the end of south end of Del Monte. And then the middle section here, there are no tree removals happening in this section. And then down to the south section, you can see that the green and black dashed areas leading to the proposed 5th Street Transit Center. And there are many trees to be removed within that transit center property, as noted here on this map, which was also from the arborist report. So 90 of the 92 trees are within this property, which is to be developed with the transit station. So again, red dots for removal, blue dots for retaining. And there are a couple of yellow dots in there for trees that they just weren't quite sure yet. They will try to retain them, but they are included in the removal totals just in case they need to be removed. Here is a conceptual layout for the transit center. I don't believe this has been finalized yet, but MST staff can talk a little further about that. But this just gives you an idea of what they're looking at and sort of the scope of the improvements will take up the whole property from property line to property line. And then this is a rendering provided by MST for that transit center area. So getting to the tree committee's role, just flushing out that the tree committee really needs to focus its deliberation and action and recommendations on the tree permit only, not the whole entire MST project. The green part, these code sections obviously are directly from our municipal code. So really you're focusing on removal, mitigation measures and conditions of approval, and then making sure that the project is consistent with tree preservation ordinance. Other details of the project, like funding sources, ridership modeling, and other jurisdictions permitting requirements are not germane to the tree committee's deliberations. So really want to keep that clear. Those things only as they pertain to the coastal development permit will really not even be in the planning commission's purview either. So just a note to keep a focus on tree committee items. And then a couple of new items I mentioned earlier. MST does request to add 2 additional new tree species to the replanting plan, in addition to the Monterey cypress and coast oak trees. They're proposing Big Berry manzanita and Western Standard rosebud. And I noted that these are not on our existing list, but one of them is native to California and both are low water users. Also adding a little variety will help ensure availability when it comes time for actually purchasing plants. And I know that if any of you have questions on that, the project arborist can go into a little bit more detail. And then just digging a little deeper, I wanted to point out that the replanting requirements in the municipal code only require replanting for healthy trees. So that actually takes the replanting or in lieu payment down to 82 trees rather than 92 trees, because the arborist report did identify that 10 of the trees were in poor condition. So we consider fair and good to be healthy. So that's just a little informational tidbit to keep in the back of your head. And then that's the end of my presentation. I'm here for questions. I do provide a motion if anybody wants to make a motion. This is just a straight up approval as is motion. But the MST staff are here also to make another presentation, and either of us can answer questions as needed.
Thank you, Allison. Does anybody from the committee have any clarifying questions for Allison? Richard?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Allison, can you clarify the application or is it the requirement for replacement of removal trees in a two for one?
Yes, our municipal code does require replacement at a 2-to-1 ratio.
Okay, so then we will be looking at some 160 plus
That's correct.
new trees.
Mhm.
And then the last part of my question is there available yet a plan for the new trees where they will be?
The MST does have that plan. It's not part of the application at this point. We typically, as we go through the conditions of approval, staff works with them to ensure that the replanting plan meets the code. So it hasn't been provided at this point.
Okay, okay, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for staff? I have one question. Allison, so you showed us additions to the species list. Are we deciding on that, or is that just informational item?
I believe I had a condition of approval that said they were only proposing the coast oak and Monterey cypress. So it would be ideal if it was the purview, if it was the desire of the committee to add those two. And you could do that by just adding them to this motion if that was your preference.
Yeah, I'm not sure we have enough time really to deliberate on those matters, but I don't know. I think this first news we have of this, so just wondering how that works. It's like, I mean, I think we're happy to do considerations like that, but
Yeah, so you might want to take the presentation from the applicant and they can provide a little bit more information on the details of those species, if that would help in your consideration. We got this information, I think, a little bit after we released the staff report. So
okay, fair enough,
that's something you
Yeah.
can further discuss.
fair enough. Any more questions for staff? Okay, we'll move on to Ms. Reinhammers. Are you giving the presentation for MST?
Yes, thank you. My name is Lisa Reinheimer. I'm the Assistant General Manager for Monterey Salinas Transit and the overall project manager for the Surf Busway and Bus Rapid Transit project. I've been at MST for a little over 9 years and in transportation in general for 24 years. And I'm also a resident of this beautiful city. I had planned to talk about some of the components of the project in general, but I think focusing on the tree removal and replacement plan is what we're here to talk about today. So I think some of this will be a repeat of what Allison said. So you can go to the next slide. I was going to go over just a quick brief overview of the SURF project on the next slide, talk about tree removals, replacements, and the tree types. We can get into your questions about those additional tree types that we just talked about. So the first component of the Surf Busway and Bus Rapid Transit project are the physical infrastructure pieces. They go from the Marina Transit Exchange through Reservation and Del Monte with traffic signal priority improvements at each of the traffic signals. We'll be upgrading those. And then the busway portion where we're looking at the tree removal permit goes from Palm and Del Monte along the rail corridor and into the 5th Street station underneath the Highway 1 overpass that you saw before, and then continues on through the city of Sand City at the terminus at Playa, but then we continue on to some traffic signal priority improvements to Contra Costa. But the service itself, the operational service, is essentially the line 20, which is in existence today. So instead of continuing on Del Monte on existing city streets, the line 20, the new SURF, will go on the busway, essentially a road for buses only to bypass the heavily congested Highway 1 corridor. So that's a brief overview of the SURF project. So let's go to the next slide and talk about the removals. We had identified 92, and thank you for the information about the ones that are not needing to be replaced. That's helpful for sure. 14 trees are along the Del Monte area. 78 trees are at the 5th Street station. This is south of the 8th Street Bridge on property that was transferred over to MST by former Fort Ord by the Army. And so the majority of those trees are at the 5th Street Mobility Station. So what we're trying to do is get into a construction period so that we're avoiding the nesting periods for the raptors and the birds after October, before February, as well as the bat nesting season. Next slide. And you saw these earlier, maybe these are a little bit bigger, but you can see the red marks there. There are quite a few of the eucalyptus trees at the 5th Street station. We definitely need to get rid of those as a hazard. And then the rest of the trees will make way for our new mobility hub that will serve CSUMB, the Dunes area, the development that's going on there, as well as the city of Marina's property to the north, as well as the transportation agency for Monterey County's property to the north of us as well. Next slide. So you heard the municipal code requiring 2-to-1 replacement ratio. We want to replant trees within the project area in combination with in-lieu fees that would be negotiated with the city of Marina. We wanted to replant the trees that in places where we can, where they're larger, more mature, to establish that growth and that canopy that you know is so delightful to see, rather than saplings. Next slide. And then the tree types that we have in our tree replacement plan are the coast live oaks, the Monterey cypress, and the other two that Allison mentioned. But we're open to what the tree list is in terms of low water use and low maintenance. So if those trees, the big berry manzanita or the western rosebud standard, need to be different trees and comply with the city of Marina, that's fine with us. We'll take your lead on that, what kinds of trees you want us to replace, as long as they're drought tolerant, resistant, and we can maintain them in healthy status. Next slide. You saw this rendering here, that's looking south. And then you saw this one, also the 5th Street station. And so our main purpose was to make sure that we're complying with the city of Marina's municipal code in terms of working with staff to make sure that we're complying with replacement plans, the types of trees, following the process. And like Allison said, we're also concurrently going through the coastal development application process with the city of Marina, Sand City, and the Coastal Commission as well. Next slide. And our timeline, we'll want to complete our permitting by spring of 2024, start clearing and removal so that we're avoiding those nesting periods, and then start replanting in about spring of 2026 as the construction continues on, and making sure that we're complying with the municipal code. And that's all I had.
Okay, thank you.
I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I also have the design team here
yeah.
that can answer specific questions as well.
Do you have a presentation from the design team already prepared? I think now is best to hear from the public, and then if we have questions, when we deliberate, we'll come back and potentially ask questions from you and your whole team and staff. Thank you. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak about this agenda item? You may have up to 3 minutes to provide comment. I do have a question of staff. Who's keeping track of the time? Nick? Okay. Any members of the public, go on and step up to the lectern and please state your name and then your comments.
Good evening, Grace Silva Santella, and my comments are strictly about trees. Yes, it's a substantial amount of eucalyptus trees happening at 5th Street, but 14 cypress trees at Palm are going to have a significant impact on Central Marina. So I am not one who wants to see 24-inch box trees planted, because I know that they're going to have a real rough time with our wind and our sandy soil, but I do think we have to have a proper mix of tree selections, which leads me into my next comment. I think that there should maybe be a slight postponement to this because you are the tree committee. And I think that it is appropriate that you have more time to have input in the tree selections that are on a list that will be going on to the planning commission. And then finally, I think there might be a problem in what they've called a rosebud tree. I'm thinking it's supposed to be is it a redbud? The Cercis. I think there's a mistake, an error in a common name there. So I strongly urge the tree committee, to be allowed more time to perhaps create a subcommittee to create a list of trees that you can recommend onto the planning commission for when this project goes through a design approval. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
My name is Jeff Markham. You know me. One of the reasons I wanted to be on the tree committee is that I believe that trees are citizens just like we are. They breathe like us. They're alive like us. They live and they die like us. But they can't move when they're threatened. One of the other differences is that they are habitat. Their biogenome is home to other living animals. I walked down Quartermaster. It's a little bit difficult to get down to where the majority of the trees that are going to be removed by this proposal are. And it's clear that this is a ecosystem that's been developed for a long time since the Army planted these trees. There are clear signs of burrowing animals. There are clear signs of birds, nests. The language that's used here of remove and replace is somewhat disingenuous to me. These trees are going to be killed, and replaced, it really means other trees are going to be planted. We don't know what, we don't know where. We don't know if any of the habitat that's going to be planted is going to ever be reestablished. You know, I remind myself when I walk up into Sea Haven sometimes, the Abrams Park area, that what was there before, some of these cypress, the smaller cypress trees, some of the smaller coastal oaks. And I walk up and see these strawberry trees up, the strawberry fruit trees up there planted 20 feet apart. That it's not habitat, it's decoration. Is that what's going to be replaced? We don't know. I don't know how you can approve killing of all these trees, the destruction of this habitat, with not knowing anything about what's going to be replaced. So I urge you to take the time to understand what's being proposed here. I could go on for quite some time about this particular project and why I think it's ridiculous and costs a lot. There were other alternatives that they could have chosen that would have very little ESHA impact and cost a lot less, but that's not what this committee is here to decide tonight or in the future. But please take the time to understand what they're talking about. Take the time, and please, you know, if you haven't been down there what they're talking about, go down and confirm what I've told you tonight, because it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other members from the public have any comments?
Hi, my name is Christopher Ian Gonzalez Wilmot, and if we are to get rid of or replace or to get rid of like part of certain trees, let's just get rid of the ones that are like invasive, because I can guarantee you like the eucalyptus trees, the ones that are not native to California are actually more of a problem for the habitat going along the coast. Let's keep like the cypress trees, because those would actually make really good for like the situation of like the highway. Because hold on. Because we should keep the native plants that are in the area, such as like as the ones we can see outside from here, but the ones that are like not native to California. We should probably get rid of those ones. But the ones that are already there that are like that are not impeding on any like construction or whatnot. Yeah, I think so. Think so.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Any more? Anybody else in the public? I think it might be the whole applicant team now, but you don't get two bites of the apple. Okay, so public comments are closed. Thank you, everyone. Now we deliberate amongst ourselves and we can ask questions to staff or the applicants if we have any clarifying questions. Anybody have any comments they'd like to make?
I had one question. I heard earlier, was it Western Rosebud that was being used? I was under the impression that was a California native, but I've heard conflicting stuff from two different people. Does the developers have any comment on that or staff?
Yes, if the committee would like, the project arborist can approach the podium for a little more information on that.
Yeah, the Arctostaphylos glauca and Cercis occidentalis are both native. The common names are weird. There's a million common names out there, so it's easier just to use the scientific name. Yeah, both native though. Right.
It's native to California.
No, Arctostaphylos glauca is native to Southern California, and then Cercis occidentalis is native to riparian areas through California.
One is proposed for this project.
It's on their list for both of them. I'm not the landscape designer, so
Oh,
I
okay.
can't say where and how,
Alright.
but yeah.
Have we seen the list of, we haven't seen the list of proposed plants.
Not the list that's proposed as part of the landscaping plan.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a clarifying question. In the Fifth Street area. No, okay. Yeah, in the Fifth Street area, the removal of the trees, is it essentially a clear cutting for construction and followed by replanting for the landscaping within that same block? Okay, so my assumption is correct.
Yeah, so can you bring up the Fifth Street area? I think it's in Allison's presentation. Yeah, so the trees proposed for removal at Fifth Street Station are for establishing new stations for the buses to come in and out. And then also for a park and ride facility as well as a pickup drop off area. And so as part of the areas that are not being utilized for that, that's where the rest of the replanting and the landscape plans would occur. And so we propose the two, the Coast Live Oak and the Monterey Cypress, and then we have the additional ones that Allison talked about. But again, I mentioned this when I gave the earlier presentation, we're open to what the tree list has on its list in terms of changing those plans. They don't necessarily have to be, anything but what the city of Marina requires of us in terms of what those trees are going to be. We just want to be compliant with the city's municipal code when it comes to replanting and the approved list that you all have.
Okay, well, the focus of my question is not the replanting, but was there a study made for this whole Fifth Street area or any of the trees to, that could be saved by carefully studying alternates for grading, et cetera, or rerouting or whatever. What it appears to me is that it's a 100% clear site, clear cutting, get rid of every tree, do the construction, do the design and the construction, and then replant much smaller trees, not mature, but infants essentially. It is my process description more or less what your project will be doing.
So you want to come up, Patrick? So what we did with the arborist is we first identified the trees that we thought were needing to be removed. And then we redid, Patrick, you redid that work recently and found trees that didn't need to be removed. So we reduced the number of total trees by what, 25%?
In coordination.
Yeah, exactly. So we were making attempts to keep as many trees as we could while still complying with our goals and objectives of improved transit services for our communities. And we could relook at it again and see if there are areas where we could keep additional trees. But from this map here, the entire area is being utilized for transit services.
Sure.
Were there any trees in the Fifth Street area other than the blue ones that were falling near the boundary, but more or less outside the boundary there at the, I don't know, I would say the south, yeah, the south boundary of the Fifth Street? They're showing the blue ones are the ones you're retaining. Were there, and there's one way up at the northeast corner that you're retaining. The 25% that were salvaged, are any of them are those blue ones part of the ones that were salvaged?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Because the first go around I had grading limits and I didn't have plans. So I had to just go off grading limits. You can't grade through the middle of a tree. And then the engineer can answer specific questions on what goes where, because it's not shown here. But a lot of these ones can be retained, and the yellow ones I think can even be retained, but I can't be sure until we're there actually grading. It's hard when dirt's moving at that scale. I guess where I'm going with this is I need more of a specific. Which one are you thinking about?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I'm thinking about.
That was the process
I'm
though, is I had
thinking
an
about
initial, it was everything within the grading limits, and then full circled, we got the plans in front of us, and then I could kind of make the determination. Is a grading line going down the middle of it, or is it just outside? Because I know that a lot of these Monterey cypress, per other large scale project experiments, not intentional, but they can survive a lot of grading in their root zone. Yeah. So I basically said anything with grading lines in it has to go because it's going down the middle of it, and anything just outside we can save. The only two that were kind of dicey, or looks like three there, are those yellow ones that we have to get a permit for because we're grading in too much of it, of their root zone. But if you have specifics, I know they have plans over there to answer those questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we'll query the rest of the committee. I have some comments, but I wanted to check with committee member Gardner if she had anything.
I do. So when you're looking at the main parking lot, there is a very large group of 618 through 636 that is really bunched together. And has there been any consideration to leaving a large swath of the trees and put parking on each sides of them? Because it seems to me you have a very large parking lot with a lot of parking spaces.
Hello there. My name is Blake Silkwood. I'm one of the engineers on the project. The 618 to 636 is where the bus parking areas are gonna be coming, from under Highway 1 or from First Avenue. We didn't see a feasible way to reroute the bus parking areas around those trees, given the,
So we're looking at bus parking. It's not for pedestrians. It's not for the public to say.
I thought you were referring to those first couple, the grouping of trees on the north edge of the property. Oh, those right there?
On the main parking, the big, huge 619 all the way down to like 637.
Sorry.
It's on the right.
Yeah,
side.
those ones right there. That's where the north edge of the property is where the bus parking or the bus turnaround, the transit operations and the pickup drop off are all occurring.
Okay, so the other side of the parking lot is for the public.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
'Cause
On the
it
south
looks
side.
like a lot of parking. Okay, now I understand. It's for buses.
Maybe I'll make a suggestion. You could show that diagram of the whole project again, where showing the lanes. Well, we don't have it in our packet, but here it is. Just if you're having this discussion, it's worth looking at.
That's bus parking? Because that looks like small parking spots.
Well, the northern part of the site at the top of the page, when that first grouping of trees, that is, yes, where the cursor is right there, that's bus parking for transit vehicles and the turnaround. And then the southern entrance on the southern side, it just went away, it's okay. Is the entrance for personal vehicles.
The parking ride.
Yes, sir.
So the trees I'm talking about, to me, look like most of them are in the public parking area. No?
They're farther north in that pickup drop off area.
Kind of half and half. So is there any possibility in this public parking area, which there's a lot of spots there? Is there like 40 spots or not? Is there any room for there's a lot. Is there any room to put some of the trees that you're proposing to take down to make it a circle area that you can park around it rather than taking them down?
I mean, that is something that could be considered. I think the one thing to note, though, due to the topography of the site, we have to do some significant regrading on the site to make it, to be able to get buses in, get the parking in and the pickup drop off around. So it makes it challenging to maintain existing trees at their existing
How
elevations.
many feet of gradients is there?
I think it's upwards, maximum about 3 feet as you approach towards the back of the site. There's also a significant cut, closer to First Avenue because there's a big hump there.
Okay, then my other question was for the entrance to your facility, which would be in the trees of 1855 to 1870 on the left side. Is there a possibility that your entrance could be moved to the right, the road to the right, which you would miss a lot of those trees?
We're as far east as we can be. We're getting in the entrance to the facility as well as the extension of the bike path.
No, it would be moving towards the right, east. Oh, so you can't move any farther to the east?
Correct.
say?
We're up against the property line there. That red line that comes across, yes.
I see. So the property, who owns the property in the middle there?
The property.
It's like a slice.
Oh, that's
I believe it's a
the,
private owner. I don't recall.
Is right there.
Who would keep a slice?
It,
like that?
it could be highway right of way down there.
Hmm.
Yeah, I do not recall who that owner is.
Because several of those trees are practically on the border.
Yeah. But it's getting the entrance exit for the busway as well as because right now there's currently a very small pathway for the bike trail.
Right.
And that is also be accommodated along with the busway entrance and exit. It takes up the majority of the right of way and we are as about far east as we can be.
Okay, so on the Del Monte entrance. And we heard from the public, some of these trees are very large, 100-year-old trees. They're significant when you enter into the town. It appears to me that the road could be moved west a few feet and you would miss these trees. Is there a rite of passage because of the railroad? Or I know that you bought property along the railroad.
I don't believe any property was bought along the railroad. Trying to see if there was this.
The right of way.
Right, that's Transportation Agency from Monterey County
Mhm.
owned right of way. They bought the rail in 2003 with state proposition 116 funds. And one of the directives from TMC is to preserve the rail corridor as much as possible. So we want to make sure that we're balancing those trade-offs between trees and preservation of that rail corridor. And so we've been working with them and trying to get that balance just right.
And the majority of these are at the busway entrance on Marina Drive.
Yeah.
As well as the new.
So like
station.
1072. It's in the middle of the roads at this point. It's in the middle of northbound, southbound Del Monte. So are you taking out one whole lane for the bus thing?
We aren't taking out any lanes on Del Monte Avenue. All these are in the rail corridor.
Yeah, through the chair, all of this work is west of the Del Monte Public Road right of way within the TAMC right of way, which is coterminous to the Del Monte Road right of way. So those 1073 and 1074 are within the TAMC right of way.
All right. Any more comments? I have a few comments to make, unless, are you through? Committee member Gardner, do you have any other questions?
So yes, 1073 and 1074.
Yes.
That is to the east of the bike path at this point right there.
Yes, that's
Yes.
east of Beach Range Road.
So the bus line can't go around those trees. Either side.
No, the right of way narrows down there. We're constricted about where we could run the busway.
Because the train that. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, thank you. So I have one question for staff. Is a developmental plan for this project forthcoming?
Could you clarify what you mean by a developmental plan, please?
Well, we've heard a lot of questions amongst ourselves, and there's a kind of a lack of understanding of where things are going to be, the landscaping, discussion about the actual identity of what species might be proposed, which I think would be appropriate. We'd be happy to consider those. But one of the conditions, item 8, in the conditions required for removal, approval of the tree removal, is a developmental plan for the properties so that we can actually see our appropriate decisions being made about where existing trees are and what are the plans for the development. All we've seen is a grading plan and the tree removals. And we've just tonight seen the actual plan for the areas. So I think it would be helpful to committee if we could actually see more detail. I'm also hearing a willingness from the applicant that they're open to thinking about other ways to accommodate potentially saving more trees. I've been to the site as well, just briefly. I think some of the trees are really probably not worth keeping, but others probably are. And so anyway, it just would be helpful to committee to have more information like that in order for us to make this decision. And right now we don't have it.
So through the chair, we do have 95% design plans that I can show to you. They're, I've been doing this a long time and they're very engineer speak. They're not easy to read. But I do have them for these sections where the trees are proposed to be removed that I can show on the screen for you. It does show the trees to be removed on these plans. But I don't know that it's going to help you visualize it any better, but I'm happy to show those design plans for the committee.
Well, I think
if you
we'd like
desire.
to see that, but I'm really just referring to requirements for permit removal. I don't feel like we really have all the information we need to make an informed decision. So I'm just stating that as a concern that I have, and that's why I'm asking if we have more information.
Mhm. Yeah, I can show the design plans, if you'd like to see them and we can walk through, but because this is a linear transportation plan and they're not proposing, this is a little bit different than other projects that come to the tree committee for tree removal. They don't have structures and it's very similar to the Marina Station project that you recently reviewed. It is grading plans at this point. So that they don't have plans that are clearly going to indicate exactly where. I don't think you have the extent of new pavement plans at this point. Maybe you do.
I think maybe what would help out here is I included in my presentation after the questions, some more visual plans that I think might be able to help out here. Because one of the things we're trying to do is extend the Beach Range Road Trail from the connection underneath the highway all the way into, if I can go over there and point to things. Hopefully my voice will carry.
Need you to be on the
Can I have-
mic.
can I
You can
have-
have this portable.
Okay, why don't I just? Okay. Okay, so this is Palm, this is Del Monte, here's the 7-Eleven, this is Marina Drive. Where our buses will come in is through where the little hand is, and come into the busway right here. But what we're also doing is extending the trail system parallel to the busway. We're keeping the existing trail that people use today, their multi-use rec trail. So part of the trees that you'll see here are within this entire sort of station area and then also along where the Beach Range Road is extending. Can I go to the next slide or can you do that? Okay. And so that continues on to a new Rain Dollar Crossing area right here. The Beach Range Road trail connection goes all the way up to where people currently use it here. So we're moving those who want to onto the west side of the railroad tracks while keeping the busway within the rail corridor as well. So it's a pretty constrained area. And what we are trying to do with the project is enhance and connect those trails for the people who want to use, their legs or their wheels to get out to coastal access there. Next slide. And then here at Fifth Street Station, again, we're continuing that connection. This is also a pretty narrow corridor underneath the highway. So we want to make sure that we're continuing that trail connection under the highway. This is continuing on to the Fortag Trail. And then we're also connecting from the Fortag Trail on to First Avenue over here. So what you'll see sort of underlying are some of those trees that you're talking about underneath here, because you can kind of see the aerial photograph underneath. So that's what we're trying to do. It's not just the busway, keep those trail connections for the people who want to use it. Hopefully that provides a little bit more clarity in what our project is trying to accomplish.
Thank you. I do have a question for you. You mentioned openness to thinking about other ways to preserve more trees. I think and this is a comment, but then I'll ask you the question. One of the difficulties we have is understanding which trees might be, you know, significant enough or not nice specimens that actually might fit into the landscape for this new project. And you made comments earlier that sounded like there's some openness to consider those kinds of things. And what did you have in mind when you made that statement?
As I understand it, you and the city of Marina are looking at a
And so I'm
list.
specifically thinking about the Fifth Street station, because I see that the trees along the main corridor, that's the right of way, those are gonna be difficult. I'm really thinking about Fifth Street.
So your question is on the tree types or the tree
You're-
removals?
You talked about, I thought you had said you're somewhat open to thinking about ways potentially to preserve more trees on that landscape.
Sure. I mean, we can definitely look at it. It will be no more than what we've already told you because we've already reduced the number by 25% to the 92. And then the 10 that are old and decrepit or not worth saving won't be saved. But if we can identify additional trees to save, we will. It will be no more than what we've identified here today.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, you want to talk a little bit to see if we have any plans, ideas of a motion just amongst ourselves? And I mean, don't want to restrict conversation, but we have not discussed it as a committee yet. We've mostly been asking questions. Well, I have one thought, and I've already expressed it in my question to staff, but I don't feel like we have enough information to properly address this project. And in fact, those are some of the comments coming from public as well. And I'm also hearing a willingness from MST to consider alternatives, potential alternatives. And I also feel like we haven't really had enough time to consider this. Marina's lost a lot of trees, big trees in the new development, and some cases it was unavoidable. Other cases they were mistakes or accidents. It just seems like if we have an opportunity maybe to look at that, that might be worthwhile. I don't know what anyone else thinks.
I actually just looking at the plans that were shown today of both Fifth Street and in Marina. I already see that the developers are constrained by the properties. Almost all of the trees that can be saved, just looking at this Fifth Street station right in front of me. All the trees that could have been saved haven't been saved. And especially compared to what they indicate was the initial plan, I think that I personally have enough information to make a decision on this matter. And there's really no wiggle room whatsoever when looking at all of these plans.
I guess I'm bringing it up because I heard some openness from the applicant, and I don't know actually if there are any other trees that are worth preserving. I simply don't know. That's part of what I'm explaining, part of why I'm professing I don't feel like we've had enough time to really think about this. A straight up and down tree permit application, the application has simply not met all the requirements. We have just got all the information mainly tonight. Appreciate that we're hearing from the applicant that there's a willingness to work with us on it, and that's appreciated. But so that's the problem I'm having is like, well, what might so it could involve redesigning part of this Fifth Street station. It could mean a different landscaping plan, maybe significant trees could be preserve, it may be a worthless exercise. I don't know. And that's the problem I'm having. I don't feel like I have enough information.
Has tree removal, excavating the roots, has that been a possibility on some of these larger, bigger trees? Or maybe bigger is harder to do, medium-sized trees?
Yeah, we've definitely talked about that internally with the MST project team. And if you're open to that, we're happy to try to save them and, move them around on the property. But you're right, the larger trees are really hard to preserve. At least that's what Patrick tells me, hard to preserve those roots to be able to make them successful in other places.
And certain species are easier than others, I imagine.
Probably.
We did a lot with the dunes and preserved them for like 10 years, but
I don't want to talk about another project, but another project did a lot of experimenting again, the asterisks on this, and the Monterey cypress transplant well at 6 inches and smaller, which don't count as a tree per Marina code, but that's only because of the limitation of the spade that comes and gets them. You could definitely box a larger tree, but then you get a crane, and then you're running into issues of overhead lines, power lines, and things like that. But if you're talking about shifting a little bit, it's really, really expensive, but it can be done. But it's boxing, and we've seen at the dunes actually as well is all those box trees sat in those boxes for a very long time. So we need a plan before that even happens, and you want to get it in the ground as soon as possible. Yeah, so it's a little tricky to run all those factors with the construction aspect involved, but that's my arborist.
is there another tree that's in that site besides cypress that look like the Torrey pines? Did that very easily?
So Torrey pine is more and more local knowledge is becoming invasive for the area. So I wouldn't advise that from an arborist standpoint.
Okay.
I saw that on your guys' tree list as well in your reviewing, which I'm excited about. But the only other species in that area is pine, which doesn't do well, and then Monterey pine and eucalyptus, which I wouldn't transplant.
Oh, no, we're not talking about that.
So I would focus on the oak and the Monterey cypress, if possible, and smaller. So you could use a spade and the success rate's higher. But there is a limit to that. Like I said, under 6 inches. I think we had some 12-inch ones that we attempted to transplant at the dunes that are not doing, because you take too much of that critical root zone with the spade.
Okay.
This question to staff. If we were to entertain a motion for continuance to give some time to look at landscape plans and the potential for doing something with some modifications, is that something that, how do I want to put this? Just what's your sense of that?
Sure, your committee could entertain that. We would recommend that if you do feel the need to continue, rather than, it would be difficult to continue to a date certain. So we would just put it off into the near future. This committee only meets quarterly, so we would expect to have a special meeting in the interim in order to keep this project moving ahead. But we would renotice, do all the on-site legal ads, all the noticing again for a continuance. While you're on this topic, I do just want to bring to your attention in the conditions of approval, J, replacement trees. The existing condition also includes the consideration of in lieu fees, which would allow, because of the constraints in both the Tampsey right-of-way and the Fifth Street station for replanting, the in lieu program does allow them to basically pay the city fees in lieu of planting new trees that the city could then use for other city projects for like the Del Monte downtown improvements that they're talking about right now as an example. That is an option that you're offered in as right now in the conditions of approval. If that would help the committee kind of have a feeling that additional care and planning would be provided where new trees might be going. The site is constrained. They're going to have a hard, if you were to require replacement of all of the trees instead of in lieu, even at 160 replanting, that would be impossible given the constraints of the site. So that's why we included the option for either you could do half and half replant, half in lieu, or some combination of that. And that just kind of opens them up to a little bit more freedom with their space, but still holds them to the responsibility of having the trees planted elsewhere by the city.
Any other discussion amongst ourselves? Anybody feeling any kind of motion coming on?
Just my thoughts on a continuous motion. I'm basically not in favor of that because I don't think there is significant wiggle room in the Fifth Street Station site. There isn't much to work with, and I've just penciled in an overlay on the removal, and probably within the Fifth Street Station block, that rectangular block, not counting the Fifth Street entry and the trails, et cetera, but just that block. Most of the trees shown in red are in the parking area. But very few are in the space shown for the bus loading and unloading and lanes, and it's in this circle in the lower center. There's a few trees in there, but 90% of the removal trees are in the parking lot. Now, if it's possible to reduce the parking lot by 50% or 90% or 30%, then you can save some trees. But if the parking lot spots are a given, then you're not going to save any trees in the Fifth Street Station. So maybe we can ask that last question. Is the parking, was that a given or is that a gift? Is it a requirement or is it just giving that for park and ride?
So one of the things that we're trying to do with the Fifth Street Station is not just connect it up to the SURF project, but also connect it up into the overall development that's going on at CSUMB, at the Dunes, and then also the Marina to Salinas multimodal corridor that was worked on several years ago, connecting Marina to Imgen, to Reservation, to Davis, and into Salinas with more enhanced transit friendly as well as pedestrian enhancements along that corridor. So to lose that parking area there is to inhibit a little, to a certain degree, that multimodal connection, the connection to the CSUMB, to other locations, to give our passengers that opportunity to use the Fifth Street Station. I will say that it is probable that people will use that park and ride location to access the Fort Dunes State Park. And we've also had conversations with state parks about that. And what they've seen in other areas, specifically at what is it called? Not Point Finios. The other, Point Lobos, thank you, is an overcrowding of parking at Point Lobos. And so they're concerned about that same overcrowding at State Park, at the Fort Arjun State Park as well. So I suspect that will be eventually utilized by park folks who want to get there. So I would say we would be doing ourselves a long-term disservice if we reduce that parking. That's not to say it's not impossible. We may just come back and need to expand it in the future. Delaying it in the future. Right. Incidentally, if I may, through the chair, we had a conversation and a site walk with the state parks folks, and they had a biologist with us on site, and they expressed some concern about raptors, specifically red-tailed hawks, and their propensity to go after the snowy plover. And they said, please take down some of these tall trees where they're using the tops of the trees to look around and see if they can find some, food for the day. So they were concerned about the trees in the Fort Orleans State Park area and that sort of dynamic.
Well, I just heard a off the record comment from committee member Gardner that I'm going to repeat. And she said, I don't know if more time is going to make a difference. So that's actually what I'm thinking about. We're also being asked to consider landscaping plans or tree species in the application. That was not included in the original packet. I think it's a good idea. I think we'd like to do that. So that's my other sense for feeling like we need more time, if that's to be included. Or is it possible, now there's a question, that let's say we make a decision about the removal permit, but can we have as a continuation item that considerations of these species that are going to be included in the new planning plans? And also the question about, do we favor replanting or in lieu for replacement ratio to put the funding somewhere else for trees?
We would ask that your committee include some specificity on that condition of approval, J, because it would make sense at this time to include it as a recommendation. The way this is written is this condition is in your staff report. It automatically becomes part of the findings and conditions of approval if you are to approve the project as is. And the way this is written allows the species and the details of the replanting plan to be done at a later time after this goes through the approval process between staff and the applicant. That's how it's written right now. So what we would do is if they requested additional species in addition to the coast oak and the Monterey cypress as part of their planting plan, we would go to the existing tree list and work with them on trees from that list to come up with a favorable agreement. We would also, as part of that or separately, come up with an agreeable in lieu fee / replanting ratio. And we would probably elicit the advice of the Public Works Department because they're the ones in charge of planting trees on public property.
Does anyone have a suggestion for a motion?
I would like to make the motion a motion. I would use the exhibit A. Is that right? The draft tree committee resolution number 2024-01.
There we go. It's on the screen now. There you go.
That's considerably less.
You can add to that if you'd like. Yeah, this is the baseline,
Okay,
bottom line motion.
okay. Then I would move to adopt the resolution 2024-01, recommending approval of tree permit number TR 23-04 to the Planning Commission based on findings, conditions of approval, and adopting MST's mitigated negative declaration, SCH number 202008019, and MMRP per section 15096 of the CEQA guidelines
I second.
with a minor clarification on that item J, the condition of approval, which would allow additional species to be considered in the landscaping plan. And a little better clarification, some clarification on the acceptable in lieu of requirement. Right now, off the record, off the motion, outside of the motion, right now, the in lieu of could be 100%.
That is the way the existing
it is
condition,
written.
yes,
It could be 100% or
or 0.
zero, anything in between.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure that that's in the best interest of the city of Marina.
Mhm.
Whereas the 100% might be the best interest of the city if they can fit it in. But, each tree must have a circle for the root system and the umbrella canopy, et cetera. Anyway, if staff could assist in a more clear requirement for in lieu. And additional, the ability to add other species. Right now, it's limited to 2 species, and that's probably not the best option.
And just to clarify, before your committee moves on to a second, are you asking that the condition read that staff has the ability to just work that out with the applicant?
Yeah.
Not to
fine with me.
not to come back to the committee for, okay, thank you for the clarification.
Before we move on with this motion, I'd actually propose a second motion, or not a different motion. Or should we vote on this one first? I think I can propose a competing motion, just so committee members are aware there could be 2 options. Is that acceptable?
You could ask the mover of the first motion if you could have a supplemental
I'm
Motion.
discussing a separate motion altogether.
substitute motion.
A different one, so.
Yeah.
I just I want to do it by protocol. I don't want to
Mhm.
stop this train if we have to vote on that motion. I'm aware that I think that we can discuss alternatives in the form of motions. Does that sound okay?
It's
Yes.
okay with
Yeah,
me.
all right.
Mhm.
So my motion is to try to capture, I think I feel personally, and I think the committee isn't 100% clear on what is being proposed. I think it's pretty clear that this is not a motion, by the way. This is a comment that prefaces my motion. That it's not 100% clear that we've seen adequate details about landscaping, identity of species. I think it's pretty clear that you're going to build a bus line, you're going to have to take down some trees. You're going to build a parking lot, you have to take down some trees. So these things are sort of obvious. Yet we're also hearing from the applicant that they're willing to explore some other ideas, and it all feels kind of amorphous and a little vague. And so it's hard to make decisions in that environment. But the positive parts of this are that, well, we could think about it. So I'm just thinking we might need a little more time to think about it with some more information and some more discussion, and to give the applicant some opportunity to say, well, we've looked at this again, and these are some significant trees with a large, large girth that maybe we could design a parking lot that included a couple more big trees potentially. And then I went up there this evening actually, and on the landscape, you see these marvelous Monterey cypress that are preserved on that landscape. And it's like it's actually a construction site, but you're on the African savanna and you're seeing these big shade trees off in the distance. It's actually pretty stunning. So it could be that it'd be a really nice parking lot if there was one great big cypress tree in the middle of it potential. But I don't actually know which cypress tree that would be, or if that's a ridiculous idea. But I think it is within the purview of the committee to think about such things. So anyway, my motion is that we ask for continuance of the tree removal permit for this project to give time for the applicant, committee, and staff to consider, are there get more information, be better informed about what actually is being planned and what options could be, and have continuance to date in the future to reconsider this item.
I think that if this were any other type of project, I would agree. But since this is an infrastructure project and they have shown to be using the space very efficiently, they use almost the entirety of the red square that we see on page 5, the grading limits. And just knowing what's going to go there and knowing that just looking at it, they don't have the wiggle room to save any trees, really. They already have saved. I just want to point out that they did already save 22% of the trees that were originally slated to be removed. They have already saved what they could, and they've already done a lot of due diligence regarding that. And I think that it's just wise to decide now, I guess, because otherwise we're just kind of delaying delaying the same outcome.
So to the chair, my name is Guido. I'm the community development director. So you do actually have an existing motion on the floor from Commissioner St. John. I haven't heard a second, because that motion is actually moving towards approval. The motion the chair is making is actually for a continuance, which is a totally separate action. So the body really needs to take up the first motion, or because those are two different actions. So I just wanted to point that out.
All right,
So-
that was actually my question, if that was appropriate to put two motions on the floor at the same time.
Yeah, so you actually have two motions, neither of have been seconded.
No,
at
I
this point.
understand, but that's in fact why I asked the question. Is that an appropriate way to have the discussion? Because if the committee members aren't aware that I'm proposing a different motion, they may all vote on the first motion and that's the end of it. So that's why I proposed it as a competing motion.
Guido, just a question. Is a continuance, is it necessary that a continuance follow the format of a motion can we have a continuance without a motion?
Yeah, I mean, you can continue an item.
We can continue. We've had continuance.
Yeah, you've had a
before
planning commission.
in the planning
Yeah,
commission without
yeah.
making a motion for a.
Yeah, so it's totally up to the body. So,
You need to move to continue.
I mean, they can direct staff, they can taste.
So
So I would also point out, it seemed like there was a request for more information. So if the item is going to be continued, staff would ask for what specific pieces of information. I run from the office on these trails. I think if you visit the properties, you'll see they're extremely constrained, especially when I'm on the running trails. I don't know if the committee has actually visited the sites. I think if you do, based on what the commissioner is saying, that you'll see it's a pretty constrained site, even at the fifth site. So I just would ask that if you're asking for a continuance, what specific pieces of information does the committee want? So.
Well, shall I answer you directly, Guido? I mean, I'm just reading the requirements for a tree permit approval. Condition 8, I'll read it. If the removal request is concurrent with developmental plans for the property and the development plans indicate that it is necessary to remove or relocate the tree to enable reasonable and conforming use of the property, which is otherwise prevented by the location of the tree. This is a condition. If it's not met, means that we cannot approve the permit. And in my view, we don't have enough information. We have not seen the developmental plan. We've seen pieces of it. We saw it tonight. On the optimistic side, I did hear some willingness from the applicant to consider other options at the site. I didn't hear them say, no, we're too constrained, and I'm really talking about the Fifth Avenue site. I didn't hear them say, no, we're too constrained. We can't do that. I heard we'd think about it. And that we had a meeting, the last tree meeting we had, actually, the applicant expressed a willingness to consider a different requirement. We actually ended up saving some old growth oak trees. So I don't know if we can do that here. I don't feel like we have enough information. I don't feel like I'm in a position to reject this permit, but neither do I feel like I'm in a position to approve it. And that's why I'm bringing these things up. Now, we have a motion. We have two motions. I think it's appropriate, unless I'm misusing protocol, to see if either of them have a motion, a second, and then we can vote on them. I think that would be the appropriate way to proceed at this point. I think my motion was reasonably clear that we have a continuance to gather more information from staff and the applicant that includes specific developmental plan that shows the landscaping, and that we have an opportunity to weigh in on the species. And that might be a separate thing altogether, but that's what my motion entails.
I second Commissioner St. John's motion.
Would I think that the order of vote should be on chair's motion first, because if whichever motion passes, if both motions pass, then we've got a problem. Okay, so it's either chair's motion or mine.
I think
And
it starts with whether we have a second. So
Okay, we
And I-
have a second of mine.
does anyone
I-
second my motion? If no one seconds it, it's over. That's it.
Yeah, the action needs to be taken on the first motion. We have a second. Is there discussion on that?
Okay, you're right. That makes sense. Any discussion about the motion? Yes. The motion that, the first motion.
I just wanted to point out again, that's the initial plans, originally plans to remove over 100 trees. I don't know the exact number. but 25 trees were saved since then. They have already done the diligence in trying to maintain whatever trees they could, and just looking again at the Fifth Avenue plans, especially most of actually all of the removed tree area was being utilized for efficient purposes, like specific purposeful infrastructure. And yeah, I just wanted to point that out again.
Can we have so there was some modifications made to the motion. Can we have a rereading so that we know what we're voting on?
Sure. So Member St. John, basically went through the sample, motion that's given to you on the screen with the addition of, having a planting plan allowing the two species suggested or other species be added to the planting plan in addition to the two original species, and to have staff and the applicant negotiate an appropriate combination of replanting and in lieu fee that complements both the applicant and the city's goals.
I would, let me point out one other clarification in my mind. The motion is strictly related to the permit for tree removal.
Yes.
And has no relevance at this time for the landscaping plan approval.
Correct.
But the condition of a condition for the permit for tree removal looks forward to the landscaping plan, et cetera.
The replanting plan, just to be clear, can be included as part of their future landscaping. Yes.
So what the primary focus of the motion is related to the permit for the tree removal. And as been discussed, there doesn't appear to be, if they spent another 3 months, they might save another tree and maybe not. I don't think anyway, I've said enough. We're ready to vote.
Any more discussion about the motion before we vote? Okay, so do I request the vote or do you? How do we do this?
I can call the
Yeah,
vote.
okay.
Committee member St. John,
Yes.
committee member Elvira,
Aye.
vice chair Gardner,
Nay.
chair Simmons,
No.
does not pass.
So that's a tie vote is a no vote. So that means your recommendation is of denial to the planning commission. That's how it's playing out right here, because it's 2-2.
Can we consider alternative motions? We had another motion that was put out.
Mhm. If it's the pleasure of the committee to consider another motion that was previously advanced, you can go back to do that.
I have to remember what it was. Yeah, let me revisit the motion that I made. I motion that we request a continuance for this item. And request that staff and the applicant consider what options might be to preserve more trees on the Fifth Avenue site. That's the site that I'm most concerned about. That's not part of the motion, sorry. And that we meet again to review the potential for alterations to the site to preserve more of the significant trees on the landscape. And also make recommendations. Oh, shoot. That's the main motion. I'm trying to figure out how to fit in thinking about the replacement trees and the in lieu of decision making. I'm sorry, that's not a very clear motion.
Perhaps what we really need at this point is a defined continuance and the definition of what we want from staff. I don't think we have the purview to require something of the applicant, but we can require from the staff.
Well, I mentioned the applicant, and so it'll be through the staff, but the applicant expressed a willingness to consider options that might preserve more of the significant trees on the property. So that's why I bring it up, but I think you're correct that it has to come through staff.
I think staff is clear. We understand what we need, so, yeah.
So the motion is to a continuance so that staff can provide our committee with more information about the site plan, the developmental plan for this site. And are there any options for preserving more of the native species that are on site? The Monterey cypress, and I'm not sure if there's a few coast oak there as well. And to request more input from us about the planting palette for the new landscaping.
Staff understands the motion.
Good. Okay. Shall we have a vote?
Sure. Chair Simmons,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gardner, Committee Member St. John, Committee Member Elvira.
No.
Motion passes 3-1.
Oof.
So just before we move on to the next through the chair, we will work with the MST team and the committee to schedule a date. It will be a special meeting. And we'll provide the requested items.
Okay, sounds good. I do want to thank the applicant for all the information and the willingness to work with us on options for this project and all the work that staff has put in on this already. Let's move on to item number 9. There are no action items, so we'll move on. No informational items. 10, no discussion items, no correspondence. And so I'll adjourn the meeting at 7:25.